You are watching T Radio V, radio in TV.
Welcome back to the Street Angel Show on T Radio V. I love how the guys in the back were like dancing to my song. That was great. Anyway, we're going to be talking now to Koa Wood. We've been discussing healing from past abuse of different kinds, and Koa is almost like a teacher and a healer, and he has a lot to say about this topic, and he's worked with women who have struggled with, hard pasts and sexual abuse, and so welcome, Koa. Thanks for being here. Introduce yourself. What would you like to say?
Yeah, so I think, to say I'm a teacher is fair. I teach Tantra, and that's a term that means so many things to so many people that it kind of needs to be defined into how I'm using it. So on the one hand, Tantra is often confused with just sexual practices and very much hedonistic, almost really a euphemism for promiscuity. On the far other end, it means meditation. To a lot of people, that's really their key into Tantra. So as you were talking about meditation.
I actually did Tantra too. I was teaching it too.
Oh, excellent. Yay. And so in the middle of that spectrum, you also have the use of sexual energy in the tantric way to provide healing space for people. And in so doing, you also increase intimacy and relationship. So that's kind of the thick middle where I spend most of my time. I've studied with a lot of people on the far meditation side as well. Mm-hmm. So I come at it from a bit larger perspective.
Right. You had said some kind of statistic about women and sexual abuse. Like what was that?
Yeah, well, studies vary, but I think it's safe to say that 3 out of 5, and I think it's safe to say 4 out of 5 women have been sexually abused, and 3 out of 5 men have been sexually abused. That's just in America alone. And if you start including some of the Far East and Middle Eastern countries, right, you can get pretty sad if Africa, it goes crazy. But even just in America, just if you focus on, that's a huge percentage. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned something earlier about, your trauma maybe isn't as dark as other people's trauma. And in my experience, it doesn't really matter what it is. If it's stopping somebody from living a fully expressed life, then it's trauma.
Right.
And I've dealt with women who, created serious abandonment issues because when they were maybe 3 years old, they were in a stroller in a grocery store and they woke up and their mother wasn't there and it scared them. The mother may have just been turned around to grab a box of cereal,
right.
But for that person, it began a chain of events which triggered abandonment.
And that's the key word, trigger. Like people who go through things in their past, you never know what could trigger something in their present. And depending on what you've been through, those triggers can bring on some severe emotional impact in your present day. And it's really working on fixing and healing those, just in the present, like whatever you have to do to turn that moment around. And, something can trigger you, but you can fix it somehow. Like, do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, let me put a little context to that. There's an author from, I guess he's Dutch, Bessel van de Kolk, and he's an amazing guy who wrote some books on trauma. He was leveraging the work that I think the VA Veterans Administration Hospital had done on post-traumatic stress disorder. And he really set the stage where he talked about trauma is a different kind of memory. So, like, I remember my first car, it was green. That's about all I remember about it, right? My second car was blue. It was a Firebird. I had great big tires on it. I had a lot more emotional connection to that car. So there's a lot more of me involved in that memory. Mm-hmm. Stepping further, I can remember an ex-girlfriend who really, really hurt me. And I can remember what she was wearing the day that all of the truth came out. And, sometimes even when I talk about it, my voice cracks a little bit, and there's a lot deep inside there. And, my stomach gets tight, my jaw gets clenched. Now I've got a lot more of me involved than I had with just the blue Firebird, right? And so we're working towards an understanding that some memories incorporate more of your body than others. And so in the case of a trauma, you might have an access. Whenever you get triggered or whenever something happens in your environment that brings you back into the memory of that trauma, it might take over all of your nervous system. Right. And so you see that with guys coming back from war. Right. When a loud noise goes off in the room next to them, they freak out, right? They hit the deck, they start screaming at their family, they don't know what's going on. They're reliving the moment that they were in that war situation, even though all visual and all auditory cues are, wait a minute, we're just hanging out at home,
Right.
right? So the way one approaches trauma release is going to be largely dictated by how much of one's system is overcome, but also where in the body the memory is being held. And that's a real key comment. So
Right.
when we talk about sexual abuse, so often that trauma is actually held in a woman inside her womb, right? So this could be everything from as simple as, her boyfriend came home feeling amorous one night. She didn't really feel like it, but she doesn't want to say no to him because she's afraid he won't love her anymore. So she says yes when she really didn't want to say yes. That can lead to trauma.
Right.
Or it can be as horrible as incestual rape,
Right.
pedophilic rape,
And it can,
ritualized
like,
rape.
shut down your lower chakras, like your root
Yeah.
chakra, sacral chakra. It's like, I know that even with my abuse, it wasn't sexual, but I know that my lower chakras were just shut off. And as soon as I started taking healing and meditation classes, Kundalini, awakening, like, boom, it was like this massive energy rush that hit me. And I think I mentioned it on like my episode 4. I was like, I felt like a teenage boy. I was like overcome with this energy. And it's like I didn't know what to do with it because I like wasn't dating anybody. So it's like I ended up channeling it into the Angel Project.
Yay.
Growing that. So it's like,
Yeah.
what kind? So how do you relate what you talked about? Like, what kind of healing work do you do with people and related to healing their traumas?
Yeah, so the main method I use for this, I learned from the Source School of Tantra Yoga.
Okay.
And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end.
Yay.
But the method itself is one where you set a very, very strong spiritual container. There's a lot of prayer involved and a lot of intention set. And what I try to do is I try to clear myself so that I can be a channel for the person to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel cherished, so that her own internal body can begin the healing process, right? And that's, I kind of always step back at the term, I'm a healer, because, I mean, if somebody cuts their finger, as long as you keep it clean, the finger's going to heal itself, right? And it's true that we can help others. If somebody's having a bad day, I can say something that makes them feel better, but internally it's their hearing of what I said that makes them feel better. And so in the same way, when we talk about trauma release, what I try and do is I create a space that's safe and sacred that allows the person to go back into that memory, and especially in the sexual sense. I mean, it can be a sexual setting, and like we're actually going to do some tantric body work, but the main purpose is that that person feels completely safe. And like you had mentioned, that because of your relationship to your dad, you had some daddy issues for a while. That's super common. And
Right.
it doesn't have to be the physical father or the stepfather, as in your case. It can be an uncle, or it can
right.
be
Anybody.
anyone, really.
A lot of women are raped by acquaintances, like in college and stuff like that. So that causes trauma.
For
And-
sure.
And one of my guy friends, his girlfriend that he got with, like she had been raped by a stranger after a party. And so when they got together, started dating, sometimes he would do things that he didn't mean to, but it would trigger her. And she would go into like memory and she'd freak out. And so he had to learn to kind of like deal with her triggers
Right.
and not do certain actions that would trigger her memories.
That's one of the things in the Source School that comes across so beautifully in the training, is how to hold space for somebody when they do get triggered. So like, let's just say you're in a situation where you're with a lover and maybe there's some manual stimulation of the genitals. And it's very, very common for women to be cut off from the sensations of their womb due to these emotional or more physical intrusions.
And there's shame and guilt.
For sure, that plays a part of it.
It's a
But
very
on
low
a
vibration.
It
Yeah.
is. And on a more neurophysiological level, it could also include neural pathways that have been blocked so that the stimulation inside the yoni, or that's the Sanskrit word for womb, the physical stimulation, which would normally in a healthy person shoot pleasure signals up to the brain,
Right.
might get caught by that shame or guilt or other trauma. And then the woman doesn't even know it. I've worked with women who've had orgasms and they aren't even aware of it. Like
Wow.
their muscles contract almost to the point of breaking a hand strong,
Right.
lots
Wow.
of fluid, and they're like, what just happened?
I didn't feel it, or it could disconnect.
Right.
Well, I know Koa did some healing work on me. It wasn't sexual in nature, but he did some clearing of my chakras and along my back, all the way up to my crown. And when he was done, I was like, wow, it felt really incredible. In fact, I had to go take a nap afterwards because it's like my body had to reprogram itself to whatever healing he had interjected into my chakras. We have 1 minute left. I know we don't feel like we don't have enough time with this thing, but there's an upcoming Tantra workshop.
Yeah, March 4th through 6th.
I'm going to be there.
Yay. There's Charles Muir, who's the guy who started Tantra in the West, really. I think a lot of people could argue that. He started the Source School of Tantra Yoga. He will be in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica. If you go to my website, which is tantra-arts.com, and click on the schedule button, you can see there's 3 or 4 meetups that give a 2-hour intro, and then there's the whole weekend. So there's links for all that.
Cool. I'd like to thank you guys for being on the show today and sharing your love, light, positivity. Next week, be sure to tune in. We're going to actually talk about healing and balancing, grounding with crystals and stones and rocks. We're going to have amazing guests to really train you on which crystals could be great. You can check me out on YouTube and my blog and stuff like that for more inspirational stories and videos. Thank you for watching today, and we will be back next week, 1 o'clock. So take care. This is the Street Angel on the Street Angel Show. Thank you.
You are watching T Radio V, radio in TV.